Cyril Ramaphosa is on an official state visit to China, and the Premier, Xi Jinping, has laid out the red carpet to warmly welcome him. He is there ahead of other African leaders arriving for the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation in Beijing. Political analyst and author Mpumelelo Mkhabela has written about this trip. Mpumelelo, good afternoon. Good morning. Sorry. Good morning.
Good morning, John.
Mpumelelo, I mean, interesting suggestion that you think at least part of what Cyril Ramaphosa should be doing while he's there, not the most important thing, but somewhere on the sidelines he should have a chat with the Chinese officials and say, you know what, some of your lads have been engaged in corrupt activity in South Africa. You don't seem to be too concerned about it. Please, will you act? I mean, it's unlikely that he's going to do that, surely.
Well, John, that's what South Africa desperately needs right now. This matter needs to be raised at the highest level, at the level of the president, because it doesn't make sense for them to shake hands and make all these friendly gestures, visit each other, talk warmly about strategic relationships of cooperation being elevated, all of that. And yet, on the ground, the stuff that is really affecting ordinary South Africans, that's really hitting the South African economy hard and strangling its capacity to create jobs, is not being resolved. And we know, in part, what it really is. And that is the corruption that happened at Transnet during the state capture era that resulted in the procurement irregularly and corruptly of locomotives. And the locomotives are now stuck. South Africa is not able to get the spare parts. Because the Reserve Bank and the SIU and SARS have moved in response to the corruption allegations, frozen some of the bank accounts, and these companies are not able to trade. But the biggest problem here, John, is the retaliatory stance by the Chinese, who are now refusing to provide spare parts. There has to be a mechanism in which the Chinese can provide spare parts, commerce can continue while the corrupt are being punished. And I don't think this matter, at least not insofar as we know, has been elevated to the level of the two leaders, which is Xi Jinping and President Ramaphosa.
I mean, I get the impression that the Chinese wouldn't take too kindly to being told by the president of a country that they might well regard as not as important in the global environment as China is. Is there a way of doing it diplomatically and without the possibility of the request or the raising the issue rebounding negatively on South Africa?
Look, I think there had been attempts. What we don't know, John, is whether these had reached the level of the two leaders. But we do know, for example, that President Gordon, the former of party president, did visit China, try and resolve this impasse. And as recently as last week, the Chinese ambassador in South Africa made a statement to the effect that China would not intervene in what is a strictly legal stroke commercial dispute. But my point is this, that if the Chinese government would not intervene, what then is the point of having cordial diplomatic relations between the two countries if the diplomatic relations are not meant to solve the real problems that affect the two countries? In this case, there's a legal dispute and there's a commercial dispute. Surely, the proper diplomatic relations are meant to enable cooperation between the two countries. And it's possible, in my view, that the Chinese government can insulate itself from the corruption that happened and throw the officials under the bus that were responsible. Just like we are doing in South Africa, where the government is not taking responsibility for what happened, and it's isolating the corrupt people, and they're being investigated through the State Capture Commission of Inquiry that happened. A report is there, and the NPA is charging them. They're on trial. So, and we also know, John, that in China, the legal system in China is very strict against corruption. Actually, the way they punish people is harsher than the way we do. You can face capital punishment in China if you are found to be corrupt. A businessman who's corrupt or a politician who's corrupt. It has happened. They've hanged people. So the question is this, that why in this case a friendly a partner is suffering as a result of corruption? And these corruption allegations are out there. They're not in secret. But China is not taking interest on its side to say, what did our guys do there? Does South Africa have a point? So it's puzzling, John, that is not taking place, at least from the Chinese side.
Yeah.
They could, So I think that it behoves on Ramaphosa now to elevate this issue to the level where he could have a conversation with Xi quietly and as leaders find a way out of this.
Interesting thoughts. Mpumelelo Mkhabela, political analyst and author. The column which we've been talking about is on News 24.